How y'all doing, ladies and gentlemen? I'm just showing off my newest order that I've done from ReaperMiniatures.com. Reaper Miniatures produces miniatures for gaming pieces like Dungeons & Dragons, tabletop, wargaming, whatever you want to do with them. Mostly the fantasy line, but also some science fiction here and there. And my newest order is I got a series of 5 new dragons, and I've never, I haven't bought a dragon in a long time, and I noticed that a lot of dragons on there are ones I like. And just to give you a sense of size comparison, here's one of your basic miniatures. You know, this is a knight with a sword, you know, two-handed sword, and he's got a shield on his back. Very nice piece. Of course, I painted them up myself. These miniatures, if you ever are interested in this hobby, just let you know they come unpainted and many of them unassembled. And I'll show you what I mean in a bit. I'm going to set this guy over here. His whole point is size comparison to the basic miniature and how big these dragons can get. Now, before going any further, miniatures like these, like this one right here, these are made of pewter. A long time ago, they used to be made of lead, but they shied away to that and went from pewter due to toxicity. But now, due to cost and such, there are now some of these companies like Games Workshop, or in this case with my order, Reaper Miniatures, they're switching towards a plastic or a resin. And now Games Workshop, yeah, kind of too big of a name for itself because they were too expensive for what you're getting. But with Reaper, at least it's understandable, because back then and then up to the 90s or so, you could buy multiple miniatures that were at a decent price. Now they're something like this could probably range from maybe $5 to $7 if you're lucky. There were times where some miniatures like that could be about $2 or something like that. But as costs went up, they decided to produce many of the same models, but instead of the pewter that they have done in the past, it's the same models. This time I have plastics. They call it new Bones line. And I'm going to show you examples. Like here's this one. This is the smallest of the new order I've got. This is a one of the dragons I have, and it's kind of a that's why they call it Bones. Is why because it has bone white here. But it's amazingly detailed, you know, just as good as any of the metals. You may not be able to see it on this one. Doesn't have it, but on another one, a miniature I can bring about, you can see some of the tiny grooves in the wings. So it's very nice. You know, they're ready to paint. And they didn't even put this in a blister pack. So again, we'll just put this guy right here. And here's another one of the bone set. This is a shadow dragon. I forgot what this one was. I think it's probably a fire dragon, but you know, despite what its name, you can paint it however you want, whatever color you want, whatever your purpose is, your gaming. You know, role-playing games have their own rules. You have your reds, your golds, and what have you. But you know, what if you just like collecting like me? Paint them however you want. But this one right here is called a shadow dragon. And again, lovely detail. You don't see much of the scale. It's kind of smooth skin. You can tell if you ever get this, you can see it on the wing here. You see these minor grooves. Now I will admit, when I picked these up, I'm sorry, wow, these are just like like cheap plastic toys. But I understand why they're going with this. I mean, being plastic, they're lightweight, so you know, much as I love metal and always love metal, I can understand why people want to go for this. This would probably be range over $20, nearly $30, and I got this for I think maybe $12. I have to take a look at my invoice again. But if you ever go to ReaperMini.com and see the price comparison between the metal and the plastic, you see a great difference. It's definitely good if you are working on a budget and you still want to collect these. This one right here, I think this was a fire dragon or some kind or like that. I forget the names, but again, much larger, but definitely you see a lot of detail in the scales. And just on a side note, I'm not liking the look of many of the gaming products design of dragons, stuff like that. You know, I guess one case in point would be like Pathfinder, where it's exaggerated all the hell. I mean, the scales are just, you know, too big and stuff like that. It just kind of looks ridiculous at times. Many of you probably know what I'm talking about. Sometimes they do. Sometimes the artwork does a nice job, but it's just sort of a, you know, get more and more exaggerated as go along. So again, this is one of my larger ones. And again, just to show this guy right here in comparison to these three. But as I said, these are just 3 of the bones out of the bone collection. I got 5 of them. Here normally when you get miniatures like these, they come unassembled and unpainted. Here is an example of one that I'll put together later. not too long after this footage right here. This is a silver dragon, but despite that, based on the design, I want to paint this one as one of the bronze dragons. It's got a similar design if you look at some of the artwork from the last Dungeons & Dragons edition. And I just can't wait to paint these. I'll probably do another video in a few months here of my progress, or at least just show after I fully finish painting these guys. But anyway, they usually come in a blister pack like this, or maybe in a box set, unpainted and assembled. And I usually use super glue, and end result, you have something like this. This is an amber dragon. And again, this is all pewter right here. And and think that the guy who designed this is also the same one who did this dragon right here. But let me see if I can scoot these sides. I want to bring him back just to show you all. This guy right here. This guy was unassembled. He had the whole body. The wings you had to put on, of course, and also you had to put the top of his head from his horns and his upper jaw. And the silver dragon is also the similar manner. But oops, knocked him over. But again, this gives you an idea how big they can be. And of course, miniatures can be much bigger. Ralph does have bigger dragons you could buy for over $100, and I think they're pewter as well. But the bone dragons they have in beno form, they started off as pewter. But the idea was, hey, let's make a series of miniatures to where it's the same sculpt, same good design sculpt and everything, ready to paint, and they don't cost you an arm and a leg. I think this guy right here is again around nearly $30 range, and I think this one was just a few. The silver dragon is a few bucks extra. But anyway, that's what I wanted to show. In a second here, I'll show you what this silver dragon could look like fully put together. And again, let's see what we got. Alright, so after about roughly an hour of trying to put this thing together, and very carefully because being metal that this is heavy, the super glue, sometimes it takes a while for it to hold, but not really too long, just as long as it sticks in a hole on its own. But I finally got him together. Very impressive. Now sometimes you can see these lines, these gaps right here. That happens sometimes when the molds aren't perfect. They won't be flushed. So sometimes that goes away when you primer it before you paint it. Or if it's really bad, as it sometimes gets, you can get something like this. This is an epoxy ribbon, and it comes in a yellow and a blue strip that you take off equal amounts of each. You sort of twirl it in your hand a little bit till it turns green, and then you can stuff that in between in these molds here, and you take a little shaping tool to make it seem to make it to where it matches the skin, so it looks flawless. It takes a little art to it, but it works. But yeah, here he is. This is the silver dragon, which, as I said earlier, I'll probably paint it bronze. And I will admit that again, I may want to think about this base. This is a very, very narrow base here, and it has a tendency to want to lean down a bit. So I may find a long piece of a longer base I could put underneath that. Probably one that they use for chariots or as cavalry. They tend to have long bases, and just to give it a wider base for it to work on, so it doesn't so it won't tilt over so badly. I'll see what I can find. But yes, there's the silver dragon, and and alongside of it, put the amber dragon next to it, and also we still have the others. Let me move this back a bit. Yes. We have the other two dragons. Tiny dragon right here. And for size comparison to the average model, the knight. Boy, his odds aren't looking too good, aren't they? But yes, these are the dragons I have purchased, and I will paint over this summer, and we'll see how far I could get. I can usually get something like this done, within about a month or so, give or take. Plus, in addition to other things I want to do. But there you go. Hope you enjoyed this.